Welcome, everyone, to Truth or Consequences. No, it's Friday night, Young at Heart, session number 177. And I'm Father James DeLucio with the Paulist Fathers in the Rectory Library, ready, willing, and able, by the grace of God, to offer you nursery rhymes, stories, songs, poems, Mother Goose, Aesop's fables, Lewis Carroll, limericks, larks, and such, and other things to keep us all young at heart. It's my joy to be with you a little early today, so you don't have to wait for bedtime to get this story if you choose. I found a delightful rendition of Little Red Riding Hood, the Italian version, in which the nemesis, the villain, is not a wolf, but an ogress. And you know, I love variations on a theme, and I love alternate versions, so I'm tickled. And that's the truth. To share with you The False Grandmother. This was collected, like the Brothers Grimm, who collected so many of the German and Nordic tales. Italo Calvino of Italy collected the Italian folk tales, although this is a translation by Mr. George Martin. And if you're really intrigued for more Italian folktales, you can find that book called Italian Folktales, published by the Pantheon Books, New York, 1980. Ready? Get comfortable. This is a delightful change of pace. A mother had to sift flour, and she told her little girl to go to her grandmother's and borrow the sifter. The child packed a snack, ring-shaped cakes and bread with oil, and she set out. She came to the Jordan River. "Jordan River, will you let me pass?" "Yes," said the river, "if you give me your ring-shaped cakes." The Jordan River had a weakness for ring-shaped cakes, which he enjoyed, twirling in his whirlpools. The child tossed the ring-shaped cakes into the river, and the river lowered its waters and let her pass through. The little girl came to the Rake Gate. "Rake Gate, let me pass," said she. "Yes," said the gate, "if you give me your bread with oil." The Rake Gate had a weakness for bread with oil, since her hinges were rusty and bread with oil oiled them for her. The little girl gave the gate her bread with oil, and the gate opened and let her through. She reached her grandmother's house, but the door was shut tight. "Grandmother, grandmother, come, let me in." "I'm in bed, sick. Come through the window." "I can't make it," said the little girl. "Come through the cat door." "I can't squeeze through," said the little girl. "Well, wait a minute," said the grandmother, and she lowered a rope by which she pulled the little girl up through the window. The room was dark. In bed was the ogress, not the grandmother, for the ogress had gobbled up grandmother all in one piece from head to toe, all except her teeth, which she had put on the stove in a small stew pan to make stew. And she did not eat the grandmother's ears, which she put in a fry pan to fry. Grandmother, Mama needs the sifter. It's late now. I'll give it to you tomorrow. Come to bed. Grandmother, I'm hungry. I want supper first. Eat the beans boiling in the broiler. Grandmother, these beans are too hard. Well, eat the fritters in the frying pan. In the frying pan were the ears. The child felt them with a fork and said, Grandmother, they're not crisp. Well, come to bed. You can eat tomorrow. The little girl got into the bed beside grandmother. She felt one of grandmother's hands and said, Why are your hands so hairy, grandmother? From wearing too many rings on my fingers. She felt the grandmother's chest. Why is your chest so hairy, grandmother? Because I wore my corset too tight. She hugged her grandmother and felt suddenly that there was a tail at the end of her rear. And she reasoned that hairy or not, grandmother had never had a tail. This had to be an ogress and nobody else. So she said, Grandmother, I can't go to sleep unless I first go and take care of a little business. Grandmother replied, Go, do it in the barn below. I'll let you down through the trap door, and then I'll draw you back. She tied a rope around the little girl and lowered her into the barn. The minute the little girl was down, she untied the rope, and in her place she attached a nanny goat. Well, are you through? Said the fake grandmother. Just a minute, Granny, said the little girl. She finished tying the rope around the nanny goat. There, I'm all finished. Pick me up. The ogress pulled and pulled, and the little girl began yelling, Hairy ogress! Hairy ogress! She threw open the barn and fled. The ogress kept pulling, and up came the nanny goat. She jumped out of bed and ran after the little girl. When the child reached the rake gate, the ogress yelled from a distance, Rake gate, don't let her pass. But the rake gate replied, Of course I'll let her pass. She gave me her bread with oil. When the child reached the Jordan River, the ogress shouted, Jordan River, don't let her pass. But the Jordan River answered, Of course I'll let her pass. She gave me the ring-shaped cakes. When the ogress tried to get through, the Jordan River did not lower his waters, and the ogress was swept away in the current. From the bank, the little girl stood there and made faces at her. Now that's an Italian version, if there ever was one. Didn't you find it refreshing? I have a little more to share with you. I found an original, well, not the original document, but a published edition of the full Grimm's fairy tales, Little Red Riding Hood. Now, I won't share the basics that everybody knows, which included, of course, the huntsman cutting off the wolf's stomach, and out comes Riding Hood and Granny, who are both saved, for the hunter came along just in time before these poor little ladies were digested. But there's an epilogue in the original manuscript, and I don't think I ever encountered this in any versions of Red Riding Hood that I remember from my youth or from my time as an adult reading to nieces and nephews. This is the short epilogue of the Grimm's version of Little Red Riding Hood. Now here's another story about I'll start over. There is also a story about another wolf who met Little Red Cap on the way to grandmother's, as she was taking grandmother some cakes. The wolf tried to divert her from the path, but Little Red Cap was on guard and kept right on going. She told her grandmother that she had met the wolf and that he greeted her, but he had looked at her in such an evil way that if we hadn't been out in the open, he would have gobbled me up right away. Well then, said grandmother, we'll just lock the door so he can't get in. Not much later, the wolf knocked at grandmother's door and called out, Open the door, grandmother, for it is I, Little Red Cap. I'm bringing you some cakes. The two girls, kept quiet and didn't open the door. Then Old Gray Head circled the house a few times, and he finally jumped on the roof. He was planning on waiting until Little Red Cap went home. Then he was going to creep up after the little girl and gobble her up in the dark. But grandmother guessed what he had in mind. There was a big stone trough in front of the house. She said to the child, Here's a bucket, Little Red Cap. Yesterday I cooked some sausages. Take the water in which they were boiled and pour it into the trough. Little Red Cap kept carrying the water until that big trough was completely full. The smell of those sausages reached the wolf's nostrils. His neck was stretched out so long from sniffing and looking around that he lost balance and began to slide right down the roof and into the trough, which was large. And so he drowned. Little Red Cap walked home cheerfully, and no one did her any harm. And that's the truth. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you had fun with these variations and this epilogue. Have a wonderful Friday night. And if you go out, wear your masks and don't talk to strangers. You never know if a wolf or ogress is there waiting for you in disguise. Be prudent. Stay healthy. God bless. Thanks for joining me. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye, everyone.